Hey everyone, Chris here. Welcome to Organizational Transformation, Empowering Communities, Week 3. Today we're going to be talking about engaging and assessing in an organization. Um, I am still, just to be totally transparent with you, I'm recording this Monday, February 2nd. It's around, what time is it? 11:30-ish my time. Yeah, so it's probably about 9-ish your time. It's almost noon my time. Anyway, sorry. Uh, there are several materials that the lead faculty shared with me, and I'm still unclear as to which ones I'm supposed to be like for sure giving y'all as core content and what is like additional stuff or stuff that might be nice to mention. So this one's probably going to be a little bit of a longer one as well. I'm getting in contact with the lead faculty just to kind of go over some stuff and make sure I understand the material that's been given to us and how it's supposed to be implemented in class or what the expectation is. Um, I also wanted to mention I did just create a team or like an online classroom via Microsoft Teams. So y'all should have received an invitation to that. This is brand spanking new to me. I literally just Googled it earlier today since everybody should have access to Microsoft, the Office suite through MSU Denver as a student there. If you have any questions, let me know. But I'm gonna start dumping some content in there as far as our weekly activities. And then you will still go in and complete your minute paper each week via the Canvas. Okay. I hope that makes sense. If not, let me know. I'm kind of doing this by the seat of my pants here because I just don't like the options that Canvas gives. And I was looking at alternative kind of options online, ones that would be like an app that I could create and then have y'all sign up for or engage with. And I mean, why make y'all go through that when we all have access to Microsoft Teams? And it seems like there are some really cool options for collaboration and engagement that aren't as limiting as Canvas, but that might still allow y'all to engage and be creative. Um, I actually, it was a presentation that I watched online on YouTube about how to use Teams. And the professor who implemented it basically said they want it to be like sitting in a classroom at a table, like a round table, a big round table, and being able to engage in that way, and that they were able to achieve it. So I'm hoping to get there. It's probably not going to look very pretty while I'm understanding the mechanics of it and making sure that y'all are able to log in and engage. But it's kind of more like a chat as opposed to Canvas, which just feels kind of like a bigger, clunkier kind of platform. So this might be more familiar for those of you who do social media or have done social media. So with all that kind of squared away. I'm recording in my office today. I've got my coffee, I've got my Dunkin'. It's very New England of me. I finally have a Dunkin' drink that is my drink. So I'll be sipping on this. Might take a couple of bites of something as well, because I'm recording this between seeing clients. So this is a very big check-in. I wanted to give y'all a heads up as to what the questions are going to be this week as far as um your self-reflection or solo reflection, journaling, just within the organizational context of practice, how are the distinctions of us and them constructed, maintained, or challenged? How is power manifested or created or acknowledged, if it is? Um, what does it mean to be like a client, a recipient, or a participant? I'll say, as an example of that too, when I worked in hospice care, um, there was a very like strict language around, if folks were at a skilled nursing facility, so a SNF or uh, an assisted living facility, an ALF, um, you would call them residents, not patients, um, because they are a resident, it's their home. So just, thinking about, why would that be, or why would that be important? Not just to the folks living there who are receiving care and assistance, and who this is their home, but also for maybe the staff and the community at large around the skilled nursing facility or assisted living. What does that say about what's important, or like the power of language, Human rights. What are human rights issues that you see as most prevalent in your current social work practice? What human rights does your organization or program seek to protect? What violations have service users possibly experienced? So, your client or recipient or participant, what might they have experienced in their life that may influence their decisions now? How might critical consciousness of human rights shape your approach to engagement? So, how does that inform your approach? I also want to start this week off again by just acknowledging the world, um, and that everything feels pretty heavy right now and pretty prickly. So let me know if you have anything in particular that you would like me to start these sessions with, like these recorded lectures. I think I'm still going to keep these video ants going as long as everybody has an ability of getting in and engaging with it. Either that or via YouTube is fine too. I know for if you had me last semester, I would do kind of an initial like body scan or just like a 1 minute kind of quick check-in. And so I wanted to give you a heads up in this class about the reflections you're going to be doing later on, so you can have these questions in mind as you're engaging with the materials this week. But I also wanted to just offer that that's something I can do if y'all would find that beneficial. So let me know. Okay. All right. So some general reminders for you. You've got your weekly readings and resources, your weekly activities, and then the minute paper, which again, those will be in the Teams classroom now. The minute paper will be in Canvas though. And your readings and resources, I think I'm going to try to eventually get them all over to Microsoft Teams for the classroom. We already did the first optional synchronous Zoom assignment, so that recording is available. Feel free to take a look at that. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to be doing the second optional synchronous Zoom assignment, I think a week from tomorrow. So that would be what, the 8th? Whatever that Tuesday is, because everybody said Tuesday night, or most folks said that Tuesday night was also another good one for an optional synchronous Zoom. So I'll get that date and time hammered out and get that published soon here. The upcoming assignments up on the 9th, we've got the organization assessment plan check-in. So again, that's a check-in. That is not an actual assignment that's due, it's just a quick quiz. And then your organization assessment assignment will be due the 23rd, so later this month. It's like a paper, or you can do a recorded presentation. I'm also very open to any other ideas or suggestions y'all have, because I know doing papers can really stink, and I want to be able to work with y'all and give you the opportunity to be creative in how you do this coursework, because I know some of this can be a lot. So contact me, let me know if you have any ideas, or drop a note in the video and for this lecture if you have an idea. Okay. So our overview for this week, again, this is basically 3 lectures in a 1 lecture trench coat. So bear with me. I'm going to try to make this as interesting as possible. I will say too, I'm normally a very visual person and presenter, but like I can't just keep dropping in like stock images of communities. Like it just feels so disgusting to me and icky. So um know that I am working on that. Like I think I'm going to try to highlight different organizations maybe for each lecture, just to kind of give you some more material to work with, or some specific images and links to go to, as kind of examples, if that makes sense. I'm also not doing the mission and vision in this. I'm going to kind of talk high level, maybe. I think I've actually deleted it though. I'm going to do that separate because that's going to be one of our activities this week. Okay. So that will be a separate video that's going to be much shorter. And then that will be one of the activities in this week's teams. Okay. So the two things we're going to be going over in this lecture are government organizations versus nonprofit organizations, just some key differences for social work practice, and then kind of a review of some of the materials you were talking about this week or reading this week about engagement. Okay. I don't know why I keep saying, okay. I'm going to take a step here. This is going to be a good chunk of information, so please bear with me. I I'm trying really hard to stay away from that, like paragraph or full sentence, just, blocks of text uh, on the PowerPoint here, but it's a bit rough. So again, it'll be long. I'll try to make it as fun and interesting as possible and to drop in examples as we go as well. So government organizations are public entities that are funded and operated by federal, state, or local governments. They're created to implement public policies, enforce laws, and provide services mandated by law. So, state health insurance, for example, I believe like Medicaid would be an example. Um, this is also something too where if there's like a local measure where, the city or the county or the state votes to approve a certain something or other, like a new program, that would be like a government organization potentially, if it's created and funded locally by the government. Okay. Um, actually, no, because I think that was a nonprofit. Never mind. Nonprofit organizations are private entities, so they are organized to achieve a mission-driven goal. So we're talking about like, the unhoused population in Boulder, for example, where I lived, is just um, growing. Or if, for example, the unhoused population in older adults and the elderly, or, however you would kind of frame that population. We're seeing now more and more that older folks are getting kicked out of their living situations because of lack of money. And yeah, it's pretty devastating that these folks are older and some need care and they are unhoused at this point. So, that would be a mission-driven goal to address that. They don't distribute profits to owners or to shareholders. They are funded through donations, grants, and program revenues. So like some theater companies are nonprofit companies. They usually offer like free classes or like the one of my internships was at Motus Theater, Motus Theater, and they were a nonprofit that one of the things they would do would they would be like invited to big conferences and do performances or like monologues of the stories of the folks that had engaged with the program in the theater company. And, if it was DACA, they would be talking about, their experiences as DACA recipients in front of, immigration legislators. Um, so yeah, that was like a nonprofit example. Funding sources, government organizations are funded primarily through taxes. So we're talking income tax, property tax, sales tax. One of my internships when I was at MSU Denver was Caring for Denver, which is actually a grant organization that was funded. I believe it's like a quarter out of every $100 spent in the city of Denver is added to this pool of money that Caring for Denver Foundation then will, send out as grant money for um, areas, like 4 different areas where uh, Denver, like citizens identified needs. Um, so let's see here. Who like has the final say on the funding? Um, Government organizations have annual budgets and they're determined by legislative bodies and public policies. Nonprofit organizations are funded primarily through donations, so like individuals or corporations, businesses. They're also funded through grants. So grants are like a huge part of the nonprofit industry. Um, if you are in a nonprofit, especially a small nonprofit, you're probably going to be either, gathering data or prepping data or interpreting data for grants or potentially even helping to write grants. I actually did that when I was at Motus Theater. Um, there are different grants available through foundations, the government, and international bodies. Um, Annual fundraising events that also, get the company's or the organization's name out there. And they also promote their mission. So, you'll see a yearly gala or, a yearly auction or that kind of thing. And this tends to be inviting wealthier folks in or folks who have connections to big companies in town or big money makers in town to try to kind of wine and dine them, but also to kind of plead their case for their nonprofit and why their nonprofit deserves funding from the community members that are there, like the individuals or the companies that they're soliciting donations from. Um, there's also FFS is fee for service, or like membership dues. So, um, again, theater companies as an example, some nonprofits might have like a yearly membership where you get 2 tickets to each show for X number of dollars. Membership allows for individual or for like the organization to count on those donations. Fee for service would be like if I go to a show, right? Like a one-off show. Um, Membership dues allow for uh, nonprofits to, be able to predict their income based on how many memberships they've sold. Um, Nonprofits depend heavily on fundraising and donor engagement. And so, again, if you're in a small nonprofit, um, kind of the one of the first positions usually to get filled is somebody that helps with fundraising or grant writing. Um, somebody who's doing the financial piece of it because you need money to be able to operate. So yeah, accountability. So for government organizations, who are they held accountable to? They're held accountable by the public and to the public. How are they held accountable? Through elected officials and through governing bodies. So usually as part of building the government organization, uh, the governing bodies, if there are any, are kind of named and labeled, and part of their formation includes how things change, who changes them, what the process is if and when something goes wrong or there's something wonky or that needs to be developed. Um, Government organizations are subject to public scrutiny. So I'm sure you've seen government organizations on the news. Uh, they're also subject to laws and regulations. Um, and so, like, for example, Medicaid, Medicare, um, every year in like January, all healthcare companies are looking at, what are the changes this year? What are we going to have to implement? Um, and how are we going to change our way of doing things in order to make sure we adhere to the new laws and regulations so that we can still be, a billable organization. Nonprofit organizations are held accountable to their board of directors. their donors, and their stakeholders. For-profits have stockholders, if they're, public. But just to kind of give you, like, because when you hear stakeholders, you usually hear stockholders as an alternative. Um, Nonprofit organizations are subject to comply with state and federal regulations for 501(c)(3) status requirements. So if you're forming a type of company, you just want to make sure that you're following the law, the letter of the law, as to how you're spending money, how you're tracking money, who all has access to that, and just that your donors or your board of directors are involved in decision making or they're not, and kind of laying that all out. Who gets to make decisions and why, and how is that built into the system, kind of who watches the watchman. So mission and scope, government organizations tend to have a broad scope, so kind of a wide lens. Even if it's like a state as opposed to federal program, it tends to have a wider lens, like they're serving all citizens or all folks who are within a specific population. So examples include like veterans or children or the elderly. And even with children or the elderly, it's like there's an age limit that the government will set for what is considered a child and what is considered, an older person. Government organizations are given that broad scope so that they can provide essential services like public health, education, transportation, law enforcement, the list goes on. Nonprofit organizations tend to have a narrower scope than government organizations. They're often created to address a specific social issue. So we're talking like homelessness, domestic violence, mental health. Nonprofits also might specifically, I don't want to say target, but they might have like a even narrower scope than, it might not be veterans, it might be LGBTQ plus veterans, or it might not be children, it might be children ages 8 to 13 who have lost a parent. It won't just be mental health, it'll be teen suicidal ideation and self-harm, with a very specific idea or parameters around what counts as a teenager. And they have this narrower scope because they are mission driven. So that mission like really, kind of drives what they do and how they do it. And they often cater to marginalized or underserved populations. So again, this tends to be like if you have like the broad scope of the government organization, nonprofit kind of fills a bubble within that. Or, nonprofits can fill several bubbles within the government organizations that are offered. And then, the Venn diagram, there would be like a crap ton of overlap. When it comes to decision making and flexibility, government organizations are bureaucratic, so very by the book. You have to do things this way. They're influenced by political considerations and changes. So, we see this every 4 years, right? If somebody new is elected, then, Medicare, Medicaid, we look at Medicare, Medicaid, we look at Social Security, like what's being changed, how is it being changed? How am I impacted by that? So, government organizations are definitely very much impacted by that. Leadership or policy changes can significantly impact operations and funding. So, an example of that right now would be the Department of Education. I can't remember the name of the person who's in charge of it right now, but she's basically being tasked with kind of completely disassembling the Department of Education for the United States. So that leadership, the government currently, with the policy of eliminating the Department of Education, is significantly impacting their operations and funding. If you're trying to eliminate a department, you're trying to get money out of there. So that would be an example of that. if you want to change something, it may require modifying state law or county policy, and it's heckin' slow, generally speaking. So, it's not just, the president or the legislation, like there's a whole process involved. And for example, some states might sue, if they haven't already, they might sue the government to retain the Department of public education, um, for, various reasons, and they would list those out in their lawsuit. Um, Nonprofit organizations are more flexible. The mission drives their decision making, and so they need to be able to pivot if and when needs change. Or, for example, if they're more community based in a specific community, if there is a natural disaster that happens, or that kind of thing, the mission might change temporarily in order to be able to support whatever their population is now, with that like kind of being a main driver until the worst is kind of past and things settle down, if like a natural disaster happens. Leadership tends to have autonomy to make innovative decisions, um, and to respond to emerging needs, for example, like in the event of a natural disaster or a community, like a major event. For example, out here, we recently had the Brown school shooting. Um, if you want to change something, it usually is part of like a strategic planning session. Most places, most nonprofits will have like a strategic plan for the next year, to at least like 5 years usually. Um, the strategic planning session is usually kind of this conflict between the mission itself and the funding limits that exist. So you want to make sure that if you have the mission as the central thing, what can we do with the money we have, and what can we do with the money we anticipate, um, receiving? Um, if another option, if you want to change something, is that they might be, um, depending on who gives you money. So if you have like a major corporate donor or a company donor, um, they may influence, kind of where the mission is headed or what the mission is going to prioritize. So, if you get like even if you get a funding source from a grant, the grant might dictate how you need to utilize those funds and track them and the data that they're hoping to like attain from you from the grant being fulfilled. Um, Hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if not. As far as staffing and workforce goes, government agencies or organizations typically staff civil servants. They have a structured career path, benefits, including like a retirement plan or like a staged earning trajectory. So, like if you look at the VA, they actually have coding for each job, and that is your pay scale. And within that job title, you have like a set amount of money that you can earn. And there's usually, it's very tiered in that way. So it's not necessarily talent based, but it is more the structure and, kind of being in the system for that amount of time gets you to this path. And if you don't, you know, get hired into another position at some point, then and you cap out at that like highest level that you can earn at your job coding or job description, then that's all you can earn. Um, there's not very much flexibility, or there's not any flexibility in that. From what I've heard, I've not worked at the VA myself. Hiring and promotion, again, standard procedures. So, you have to go through XYZ procedure to be hired. And then if you go through a promotion, again, it's very formulaic and strategic. It's just boom, 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 boom. You can expect, generally speaking, um, these jobs tend to be considered very stable. But, another example of that right now, right? I think at least in my generation, I'm an elder millennial, I'm 38. Um, there's like this thought when I was growing up and entered into high school and then college and then the workforce, there was just this idea, this mentality that like healthcare and education will always be good jobs. That and like tech, um, like uh, like IT kind of tech. Um, those are not necessarily, that's not true necessarily anymore, at least not in the way it was um, when I was kind of growing up. That and government jobs. Government jobs were always considered to be steady and kind of unshakable. Um, but yeah, that doesn't seem to be the case anymore, which is kind of interesting. Nonprofit organizations, so their staff includes full-time staff, part-time staff, and volunteers. Usually they are a more passionate workforce, so they identify with the mission and they're motivated by the mission and not necessarily by financial gain, meaning not like, folks who work at government organizations or agencies aren't, motivated by money. Those tend to be more steady paychecks, but like if you go work for a nonprofit, it tends to be less of a sure thing depending on the nonprofit. Um, so there's this thing about, you never know if you're going to have benefits or not. Some nonprofits will have to lay people off if, fundraising hasn't gone well. Um, some people will hire in volunteers and then drop them back down to volunteer status, depending on funding. And that's basically what this next point says is that hiring and promotion, due to the limited and changing funding sources, um, just a good season, a bad season, um, having turnover in your fundraising department may impact salary, benefits, and positions. Service delivery and collaboration. We are getting to the end of this, I promise. With government organizations, service delivery is all about access to services. It's universally mandated by law. So you've got public schools, you've got Medicaid. Like if you are a certain age, you are expected to be engaged in that, or you have access to engage in it. Uh, Access to service must comply with state and or federal policies, so there's not really workarounds, right? There aren't any like exceptions to the rule, and that can be very frustrating, but it also, kind of really defines the boundaries of who can access these things and who can't. Um, how do they collaborate? They formalize collaborations through contracts, interagency agreements, and public-private partnerships. So usually if a government organization is working with another company or nonprofit or somebody or other, it's, kind of publicized. It's put out there. It's not, hidden from the public, unless we're talking like military, which, makes sense. Nonprofit organization, their service delivery is primarily, for the most part, from, you know, uh, what we've seen and what we've discussed, it's to fill in the gaps left by government organizations. So, if folks don't feel comfortable going to the government for services, like, for example, undocumented folks right now, or folks who are documented legally in the country, um, but like don't feel that they can leave their homes or don't feel that they can go to the hospital or go to school. Um, that's a need that is being met, um, just due to the kind of unprecedented times that we're in right now. Um, if they are going to collaborate, nonprofits will collaborate with other nonprofits, government agencies, again, to kind of help fill gaps, community stakeholders. So if there is, a faith community or a few different religious or faith communities in the city, where there is a natural disaster and FEMA comes in, like they're gonna reach out to those places to help coordinate assistance and help. Um, Strategic partnerships. So, if there are collaborative grants, like, you can always apply for a grant with another nonprofit to kind of partner up and do something specific or special in the community. or other initiatives. So again, grants tend to dictate how you spend the money and what they expect in return for the investment that they're making. Um, Strengths and challenges. I think this is the last thing. Thank you for bearing with me thus far. Government organizations, their strengths are generally stable funding, legal authority. They have a broad reach and an ability to enforce policies. Their challenges are the bureaucracy piece, right? Slower response times and the fact that, it can kind of change with the wind with political influence. Nonprofit organizations, their strengths include their flexibility, their ability to innovate kind of almost on the fly, right? Or to pivot. Um, they usually are community driven in their approaches. So it is very much like the kind of thing that we're talking about, being informed by the community in order to provide support to the community. Whereas the government might come in and be like, y'all need this thing, here's this thing. Nonprofits tend to be like, what do you all need? Okay, here are some ideas of how we can do that. They have that niche expertise too. The challenges of nonprofits definitely include financial instability, dependency on donors, and a limited reach. So um, that makes sense, right? Implications for social work. I think this is the last slide. I know I just said that. Government organizations understand legal frameworks and bureaucratic processes. You need to understand that. If you're going to work for a government organization, you need to understand the legal frameworks and the bureaucratic processes involved in your position and by your department so that you just know how you're supposed to operate. Um, One of the things you can do as a social worker in a government organization is to advocate for policy changes to improve service delivery. Nonprofit organizations engage uh, in fundraising and grant writing to support programs. So again, no matter where you work in a nonprofit, I mean, heck, even if you're a volunteer, they're likely going to be reaching out to you at some point to ask for a story or some data around how the work that you're doing is impacting the community or the population you're assisting. Um, there's also an opportunity to build community partnerships to expand the organization's reach and impact across sectors, no matter who you're working for, you get to recognize the strength of whatever type of organization you're working in, um, to leverage the strengths for greater impact. And no matter what, as a social worker, we facilitate communication and build trust between government organizations, nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations, community members, stakeholders, stockholders. No matter what position we're in, we're facilitating conversation and communication and building trust between each, like a mediator, right? To address systemic issues effectively. Huzzah! Okay, cool. I'm gonna take a sip. Ooh. Engagement. How do we engage with people? Like, how do we engage with organizations? How do we engage with communities? It's like, phew, right? This is a quote from 2005 from the PowerPoint that the lead faculty sent for this. I don't know where this quote is from, but it's from 2005 from these people. Uh, when social workers enter helping relationships, they enter with their own biases and prejudices. It is these biases and prejudices that can and often do affect how they listen to the problems of their service users ultimately, and ultimately how they proceed to address them. So however we enter a space, um, we come in with our implicit and explicit biases, right? The things we recognize and know about ourselves, the things we do in public and say in public, and then the stuff that has been, conditioned into our way of thinking, um, conditioned into us in society as to what is a problem and how we can fix it. Um, so what we're going to talk about with engagement today is more so just about like how do we know that and name that for ourselves and reflect on that so that that can take a back seat to the individuals in front of us, the community in front of us, the organization in front of us. So in just practice, we're talking about meaning, we're talking about power, history, context, possibility, not just what we think is possible, but what the people in front of us think is possible, or the organization in front of us thinks is possible. History isn't the same depending on who you talk to and what questions you ask. Same with meaning and power. Like, who has the power in this situation? We might see something and notice something different than what is being told to us or what the folks in front of us experience. Engagement, teaching, learning, action and accompaniment, critical reflection, evaluation, and celebration. Again, these are kind of our steps, right? So let's take a look. So with engagement, we want to be prepared, but we also want to be open to what's going on in the moment. You know, you don't want to be so prepared that you're scripted, but you want to prepare to the extent that you're able. I mean, sometimes, heck, like sometimes you just get the case file as you're walking in, right? Um, and so it's better, in my opinion, to show up imperfectly than to not show up at all. Um, in our imperfection or our humanness, if we're able to show up authentically and show genuine caring and desire to understand without judgment, that is openness, right? And that's also a level of preparation as well. That doesn't matter if you have the details in front of you necessarily. Being, doing, becoming. So there's something about, like, you know, talking the talk and walking the walk, right? If we talk the talk, that is just great. But like, if we're not walking the walk, then we are not embodying the message that we are trying to send, right? Um, so I think what this is getting at is basically actions speak louder than words. An example I can give is I've got these kiddos who I've been seeing, two brothers. I've been seeing them separately, and they have just not been opening up to me at all. And that's okay. That's okay. I figure with their history, just showing up as an adult who does not judge and who just genuinely cares about them and thinks they're good people and good kids who are just kind of having a hard time. Um, like, I've become, you know, a constant adult for them and like a placeholder of, you know, routine and kind of like what alternative options are around there and out there than maybe some of the other adults in their lives that they've been experiencing, if that makes sense. So I'm showing by my actions, by just showing up and consistently just being there, non-judgmentally, and just being curious. They've finally started to open up to me about stuff, you know? Process and commitment. This is one of the hard things that we deal with, right? Um, and I think that we are seeing now more and more play out in organizations in particular nonprofits and government organizations, is that the burnout is so high because the caseload is so high and the expectations are so high. It's like we're not working 40-hour weeks, we're working 60 to 80-hour weeks and not getting paid overtime. Um, it's hard when, you know, you're a kid and you have gone through 5 therapists in the last year because DCF does not have the retention, you know? Um, engagement is a commitment. I'm not saying that if you are experiencing burnout or moral injury, that it is not ethical to stop away. I'm saying or step away. I'm saying more so just in understanding that you are planning on working with a community, that is a promise, right? That is a commitment to the process. And sometimes that can be way more than you expect. But if you really are committed to the mission and the vision, if you really believe in the work that you're doing, again, if people are working you into the ground and you're experiencing moral injury or just burnout, you need to be able to step away, and the company, organization, what have you, should have somebody that can step in for you. But just be aware that that might hurt the process, and that might hurt the commitment and engagement of the other folks that are engaging in the process, right? There's a certain level of trust that needs to be established and maintained in order to bear witness to another's story with non-judgment, and to hold space for them and to just honor their experience and perspective and thought. I think so much of our society right now, folks are just not listening to each other. They are listening with the intent of responding. They are not listening just to listen. Um, it becomes very difficult to be a person in the world when nobody listens to you. A good, I would say, quarter of my clients that I see um, are people that experience pain, physical pain, or have medical concerns that nobody has taken seriously. Nobody believes them. And in just saying, I believe you, I mean the relief on their face, the just the experience of witnessing somebody's story, their understanding of their story. Again, I don't care what the reality is until I'm, sitting down to do the treatment and like the diagnosis and the treatment plan, right? Um, the story that we tell ourselves, the story that we tell other people is very important. And so many people who have been negatively impacted by systems and communities that have been negatively impacted by systems have been told via the dominant narrative, be that, society or the news or what have you, that their story is invalid or that their experience is not true. And I mean, it's like the worst form of gaslighting that I can think of. It's so destructive and just, um, yeah. So anyway, longer on that slide than I thought. So the power of relationship, when we think about a relationship with somebody and establishing like a partnership, right? Or a working relationship, some of the words that can come to mind are like the heart of social work is the relationship, right? It's the therapeutic relationship or the bond or the trust that we form, that we don't break, you know? Um, relationship as like social work's soul. So it's like the spirit of what social work is, no matter if you're micro, meso, macro. Relationship is such a key component to who we are and what we do and the work we do. Empathy, genuineness, and like unconditional positive regard. So this is that non-judgment that I'm talking about, or like that authenticity of just being present with somebody, with several somebodies, with a group. Um, there's also this idea of maybe an entry into a conspiracy of hope, which I kind of like that idea right now, especially um, a conspiracy of hope. Um, Dr. Perry, who's another faculty member, who I highly recommend if you get a chance to take one of their classes, totally recommend it, especially trauma-informed care, um, talks about I will hold on to hope for you. You know, I hear that you do not have the capacity for that right now. That's okay. I will hold on to hope for you. There's almost no point in trying to improve circumstances if we don't have hope. And it is very easy to give up hope, um, especially in the face of insurmountable odds. But you will always find folks who have identified new and unique aspects and ways of finding hope. What else would you say is missing there? What else describes or feels like the power of relationship and social work to you? What's missing? So there's power in the process. Like what's in a name? The name of your organization or company or um, movement, right? So all of these examples here that I've shared images of are recognizing positionality, right? Uh, there's the uh, pathogenic power of racism. So, I'm sure you've heard of the Black Panther Party, but did you know that the full name of the Black Panther Party is the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense? So the context is so important, right? Um, ACT UP, the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, ACT UP, they did this whole thing in the 80s. They would have like they would protest outside of the CDC. Fauci actually was the leading the CDC at that point, and they would hold up posters, they would hold up signs, they would have banners. ACT UP just even like to me, it just says like we need to do something about it. Um, they would have demonstrations where they would just hold cardboard sign gravestones. There was also like the AIDS quilt. That was like one of their actions. um Me too, being able to incorporate hashtags and social media. Hashtag me too. um I don't know if you've ever heard of the Capitol crawl, but um in the 90s, the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, had not passed. So this was early in the 90s. A whole bunch of disabled individuals crawled up the steps of the Capitol. Um, and I am deeply moved by this protest because they crawled up the steps to demonstrate that they are people and that they deserve rights. And the ADA has helped me personally. I'll say that too, We talk about the power of whiteness and like heteronormativity, you know. The picture on the bottom here is from Obergefell v. Hodges, where um, uh, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of same-sex marriage. Um, the power of ableism, right? The Capitol crawl. Again, that name is just so like, it just gets you, right? Um, Scheme is a professionalism. So, like, there's this idea of professionalism that depending on your generation or how you were taught or where you grew up, like, there's this idea of professionalism and that there are certain societal niceties or boundaries that we don't cross. I don't know if you've seen on social media, there have been things about like, people getting fired for doing TikTok videos. And it's like, nobody taught people how to not do that. Like you shouldn't show how you count the cash register and how you put things away in the safe, right? And that you are alone walking that money to the safe every night. Like that is, and with doctors and nurses and like, therapists, right? Do you see any PHI, patient health information or private health information behind me? No, but there are people who, even working at banks, for example, you take a selfie and you've got a spreadsheet of people behind you. It's like, so this idea of professionalism, right? The challenge of history. Everything is influenced and impacted by history and context. And so things that hit heavier or have greater meaning because we understand the context of history and utilize it, leverage it um, for effective storytelling. And recognizing and honoring the insistent daily struggles, like another one, again, the Capitol crawl. Um, the Black Panther Party for self-defense actually started community like lunches. That's my understanding, at least. I think it might have been school lunches, but like it was literally mutual aid in communities where other nonprofits and things were uh, only helping people that acted a certain way or did a certain thing, right? They wouldn't help some of the most vulnerable. And so that was a situation where this group emerged out of a need that the community had voiced together, and they did what they needed to at the time to protect themselves and their community and to address and meet those needs. Cultural political context. So this is the fun part, right? We talk about cultural competence versus cultural humility. So cultural competence infers that there's like a box that you check. Like I am culturally competent, you know? But cultural humility is a reframe of that where we get to constantly be curious and let others tell us what their experience is. Because even if you take like a cultural competency course or what have you, I can tell you, being queer myself, that there are so many different ideas and perspectives and understandings and, um, driving factors and conflicts within the LGBTQ plus community that like I, as uh, a non-binary white assigned female at birth person, cannot speak to um, a Black transgender assigned male at birth person's experience. I can't. That's not my place. And so I get to bear witness to stories. I get to, if folks feel safe enough to share with me, right? Like that's cultural humility. You get to tell me what your experience is. I'm not going to hear that you are X religion and then go, watch a YouTube video on the basis of X religion and then, um, you know, come back to you and be like, so how do you do this? How do you do that? Because that's not what it is, right? Everybody's, I mean, heck, look at America right now. If folks abroad came to America and started asking us all questions, we would all have different ideas and views and experiences of what's happening in our country right now and what our history has been and how it's influencing us today. Um, but we're all Americans, right? Um, Again, this idea of bearing witness to another's story, it's an honor, it's a place of respect, um, that sense of openness without judgment. If people feel safe enough with you to share their story, that is sacred. That is so sacred. Um, you want to suspend disbelief. Uh, like for me, when I have a client in front of me that is telling me that just something that sounds unbelievable, or, they're telling me that they hear voices or they see stuff that's not there, I I'm suspending my disbelief. I believe the person in front of me, whatever their experience is, I believe them because that is what they believe. Um, they are the expert on their experience, and that is important. That is integral to the work that we do. Um, it's only after the session is over that I get to sit down and be like, okay, what does that mean in the context of what else I know as far as, a treatment plan or a diagnosis? We want to understand as a partial and perspectival observer. And we want to link meaning and power, what it means based on what the individual or group in front of us says it is, and our understanding as well, right? That's that self-reflection piece. Conflicting things can be true at the same time. It's kind of confusing, but social work is a big old gray area, and it sucks, but it's also really helpful to see things that way, even though it can be painful at times. So community can be a container. Um, it's difficult to imagine our life without structure, right? Community can offer buffering, like give you boundaries that you are meant to operate within. It offers support or constraints, things that we can and can't do based on who we are as a community and our relationship to you as the member or you as the observer. Skills of engagement are anticipatory empathy. Um, we want to be present with people in their experience and in those moments. We don't want to sympathize. Sympathy can be condescending or it can be experienced as condescending. Um, again, observe, notice, bear witness. Body consciousness. So if I go into a space where I don't feel safe or comfortable, I'm going to be like this, like try to be as small as possible. But if I'm the observer, if I'm the social worker in that environment, I'm going to try to be open, I'm going to try to feel my body and like if I'm feeling anxious, if my heart's beating super fast, and just try to regulate my own nervous system, especially if those around me are in kind of like a triggered or heightened nervous system space, right? Deep listening. Other ways of saying that are like radical listening, attentive listening, deconstructive listening, or perspectival listening. We want there to be like a dialogue going on. Even if we don't say anything, the silence speaks, you know? Um, there's this concept of like active waiting where I don't know if anybody's been in like an improv class before, but it's like this yes and thing, you know? We want to be present and we want to be fully present in that moment so that we can sit in the silence and have it be active. It's not passive. It's not, but it's like fully here and engaged. Woo, okay. We made it to the end here. We've got your self-reflection questions again. Don't worry. I will post those. I'm going to be putting these in the I'm going to try to put these in the Teams thing because each of you is supposed to have your own like book, like notebook, student notebook in Teams. Um, if this ends up being a total disaster, totally fine. You get to see me mess it up and try to pivot. Um, but hopefully this ends up being like a really cool way of utilizing the course. Okay. Thanks so much for your patience. There will be another video along shortly about mission and vision.